So we were talking about epistemology, faith and epistemology. Epistemology is the theory of knowledge. It answers the question, how do we know what we know is truth?
But we didn't cover the last question. Where am I going?
Where am I going is, said for Christian has the answer, where am I going? We have two places only to go. God wants us to reach God, but for that one the sin problem has to be taken care of. If not taken care of, we will reach eternal hell. But for all the other systems, they don't have an answer. Because they start with the who am I, they don't have an answer. The evolution says that you are a bag of chemicals. How did you came here? By chance. By chance. No design. Where am I going? Absolutely nowhere. So they don't have the last question, irrelevant for them. But only for Christians. Only for Christians. So epistemology is very important. I was talking with Josh the other day and I was asking, how do you know what you believe is true? That's a big question. How do you know what you believe is true? You believe Bible is the word of God. How do you know that's true? You believe Jesus Christ is Son of God. How do you know that's true? You believe there is a soul. How do you know that's true? You believe there is heaven. How do you know that's true? People are going to ask all these questions. See, they're just not going to swallow every one of your statements and say Amen. No. Those days are gone. Those days are gone. People are going to ask us back questions. So epistemology is unavoidable for us. Unavoidable for us. How do we know what we know is truth? Knowledge is related to thinking, right? Knowledge is related to the thinking. And thinking has an objective and a subjective side. What I think and how I think. I think about God. God is the object of my thinking. But how I think about God, that is subjective. It is not purely subjective, but subjectively objective. I think rationally. I think empirically. I think scientifically. I think fideistically. So some people say, how do I know? How do you know what you know is correct? They say that logically I know. The logical inferences make it right. Okay? So their absolute is what? Logic. Anything that is logically consistent, they will accept as truth. If something is not logically consistent, that is not truth. So God is love. That is 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. So then what is 4? 2 plus 2 is 4. So what is 4? 4 is equal to 2 plus 2. So God is love. Then love is God. Logically correct? Yes. But theologically? See that? I just gave one example, So logic is not absolute. Logic is not absolute. Sodium is? Sodium is?
Sodium.
Yeah, sodium. What happens if you take some sodium and put it on your forehead? Sodium will burn you. And chlorine is? It can also burn. But sodium chloride is?
Salt.
Does it burn you? You can put it in your pocket. Hydrogen is self-burning. Oxygen is? Supports burning. What hydrogen plus oxygen is equal to water, that is not only burning but putting out fire. How you explain it logically? See, logic has its limitation. Logic has its limitation. So all logic is not absolute. There is some logic. That some logic is absolute, you cannot say that some logic is correct. That's true. Truth is logical, but logic is not truth. So their argument that I know what I believe is true because it is logic, it is logical, it's irrational. No. There are many things that are not rational that are true. Many things that you cannot say, How will you explain two people watching the same movie, one becoming a mental patient, the other is all excited because the movie was, little cruel and killing and murder and all those things, and two people were watching together, and one could not sleep for nights afterwards. And the other just went and slept it nicely. How will you explain that? Logically you cannot explain. Oh, you will say that the two people are different, but the watching process is the same, right? So that means that there is some difference. There is a point where individual differs from individual. But evolution cannot explain that. Because for evolution everybody is just matter, just elements, just salt, a bag full of chemicals. So how can one chemical be affected while the other chemical is not affected? So rationalism has its limitation. So some people say, I know what I believe is true because it is rational, it's reason. No, they fail, they cannot explain everything, only something. Others say that, okay, I know what I believe is true because I experience it. That's empiricism. Experience determines the truth. Do all people experience the same way, the same thing? No. Take for example the prodigal son and the elder brother. Both boys grew in the same home, same food they ate, same father, same mother. But how did the elder brother reacted about the father? You are so miserly, to this day you didn't give me 1 kilo of mutton to eat with my friends. But to this, your son, you lavishly spent. So if it's experience, make a verdict about the father was a very mean man to the older one, the elder son. But the father was a very liberal person for the younger one. Because he gave when he asked his property. When he came back, he received him and lavishly spent everything, See how experience differs? Experience differs. So empirical, no two people really have the same experience on anything. On anything. Because experience is subjective, experience is not objective. That's the reason. Subjective means that it's your coloration, right? It's your coloration. You cook the same food, serve everybody. Some say, why? It's very hot. The others say, you got some more chilies? I could put. I thought he said it's too hot, maybe for him. For me it's not. It's subjective. You cannot have an objective measurement. It's very subjective. So experience is always like that. Some people listening to a music, they like it, and I said, shut it up, I don't like that. So, you don't like that? We all like it, yeah. Do we have an objective standard to decide with music? So experience is never objective. Experience means something, the sugar is objective, but sweetness is subjective. You put in your mouth, you put in my mouth, various people's mouth, the same amount of sugar you put in the coffee, you drink it, some say, you didn't put sugar in it. I say, you put too much sugar in it. That's subjective. Heat is subjective, right? Oh, I like hot coffee, burning coffee. But others, woo! It's all subjective. Experience is subjective. So you cannot rely on that one. So the question is, how you prove that. So empiricism or, your rationality and all that. So then it all comes, some say scientifically. Well, scientifically we can say that yes, science depends upon your experiment, your observation and all that, that's true. But how many things you can prove scientifically? Very few things. I got a headache. How will you prove it scientifically? You go from doctor to doctor and they all give this, and finally one doctor says, you are a mental patient. You don't have anything. I say, you are crazy. You should not, you are not a qualified doctor. I have a headache. You say I don't have a headache? Who are you to say I don't have a headache? What qualification do you have to say I'm, What? See? So we all have, നമ്മൾ പറയില്ലേ എന്താണ് തല ഇങ്ങനെ കറങ്ങാന്ന് പറയില്ല എന്താ പറയുന്നത്
Dizzy.
No, giddiness is different. Giddiness is തലകറക്കം. Spinning my head, Now you go to the doctor, you say, the doctor, I cannot stand up that because when I get up, my head seems like spinning. The doctor says, it's not spinning, it's standing. തലയൊന്നും കറങ്ങുന്നില്ലടോ ഇയാളുടെ തല അവിടെ തന്നെ നിൽക്കുക എന്താ ഇയാൾ പറയുന്നത് There are a lot of things the doctors cannot scientifically, by scientific research and scientific all these things you cannot. There are limitations. Because science is a growing phenomenon. Science is a growing phenomenon. All growing phenomena are imperfect. That's why they could grow. There is room for growth. There is room for correction. That's why there is growing. So science is imperfect. It is correcting itself and growing. So when you can rely science, when science is fully grown and there is nothing more to grow, will ever such a time will come when science will? No. So that means that science will never be reliable. It's comparatively reliable, but it's never absolutely reliable. Why? Because for science depends upon man for its theory. Science never make a theory itself, does it? No, it's a man. And as long as the man is subjected to corruptions, mistakes, error, science cannot. Now Einstein's theory of relativity is being challenged and some people are writing thesis all I write in some magazine. It's being challenged. Well, who knows, tomorrow it will be proved. Then we are all fools because for a long time we believed in it. I don't know whether it will be proved or not, that's different. And so then comes finally the fideist. That's by faith I know. By faith I know. Yes. So actually, speaking honestly, every system finally comes to this. The evolution say that I believe matter was eternal. Yes. And every system will be saying that. I believe. You cannot avoid the word believe from the vocabulary and proceed further. No. There's some point you have to have assumptions, and from assumption you move to assumption, then finally you say, I believe. Even when it comes to the death of a person, and the doctor says that I believe he is dead. Because you're talking about brain death or heart death. What are you talking about? So sometimes even that will happen, So everything is subjective. So faith is as objective as any other science is subjective. Faith is as objective as. If you don't have an objective side to the faith, it's all subjective, then it is not faith. See, when I say I believe in God, God is the objective side. I may be the subjective side, but God is the objective side. I'm not believing, I'm believing in a person. I have reasons for that one. Yesterday I prayed to God and God answered my prayer. Yesterday I was very sad and I prayed and asked God to comfort my heart, and after prayer my heart was comforted. Well, so I prayed to an objective person, God. I got a subjective experience, peace. It's true in every case. You cannot say that it is wrong. And even the Hindus' faith, you cannot say that. Hindus go to Sabarimala, or they go to Guruvayur, or they go to here in Andhra, what is that big place? Tirupati. Yeah, they go to these places and they pray, and their prayer is answered. I won't say wrong. I said that who answered, that's a different question. Who you prayed to, that's a different question. But who can say that you prayed to the Tirupati? Who is there in Tirupati? What God is in Tirupati? Balaji, okay. Who is Balaji? And they are all either Shiva or, they are all. This is a different local names like for Mary, it's Velangandi Mada or it's, this Mada or, but these are all incarnations of either Brahma has no incarnation, but all the other two has incarnation. So who is Balaji? Balaji is Vishnu? I don't know. So that Balaji is an objective because that there is an idol called Balaji, and behind that idol there is a demon that provides power. Because Paul says in 1 Corinthians 10 that those who worship, they are not offering to the idol but to the demon behind it. The demon is giving its power. So behind Balaji there is a demon. They are praying to the demon. And behind us we have God. We are praying to God. So when they got the answer, you cannot deny that they didn't get the answer. So, there is supernatural power and people are praying to it, people are getting answers. So, fideism is really not wrong. Fideism is really every system finally come to and say that I believe. They have to say I believe.
Uncle, how will you spell fideism?
F-I-D-E-I-S-M. F-I-D-E-I-S-M. Fideism. Fide means faith. Sola fide. Only by faith. For example, when I was a child, a good part of my thinking was controlled by parents. My thinking faculty was molded and controlled by my parents' thinking. My conscience was my parents' conscience. Was it wrong? Was it wrong? My parents told me, do not touch the stove, your fingers will be burnt. I did not touch. Why I did not touch? I believed was I wrong? So I was operating on what? Faith. I was operating on faith. So as a child I was. And my conscience, until I was almost a teenager, my conscience, not a teenager, but before that, but I was living on the conscience of my father. If my father says something is wrong and if I do, I feel guilty. If my father said something is wrong, I am supposed to do. If my father wants me to do something, if I don't do it, then I feel guilty. Then slowly I was weaned from the conscience of my father. I started living on my own conscience. The same way, my parents stopped telling me what is right and wrong, then I slowly begin to formulate. But the fact that my thinking system, my conscience system, they are all molded by my parents. So I put my trust in my parents. Was it wrong? So if I believe that I am made by God, is it wrong for me to put my faith in God? If I can put my faith in my parents who has begotten me, my parents have told me that you are created by God, and I know I am created by God. Is it wrong for me to put my faith in God? No, it's never. It's never. So the fideism is not necessarily any inferior to rationalism or empiricism or scientism. It's equally one system. Equally. My thinking was slowly controlled by my teachers and the education system. I went into the institution with firm belief that I am created by God and God loves me and cares me. There my teacher said, that's all mythology. Your parents were stupid. They didn't know the truth. There is no God. A lot of children believe that, right? So they become atheists. So where did they got their atheism from? Faith in teacher. Faith in the textbook. Faith in the research of somebody else. That's what it is. So we all operate on faith. If somebody makes fun of faith and say that that's inferior, that's nothing, it's wrong. Who does not live by faith? When did I begin to think independently? Actually never. My reason is educated and developed. I cannot think rationally without using the software introduced into my rational mechanism. All the laws of logic are developed by someone else. I only apply them. There is no human being on the earth who developed his own software and then, he think by it. Somewhere else has programmed him. I cannot think empirically without the influence of others. Black is bad, white is good. Are not always my personal experience. I am told by others. Marijuana, opium, hashish are bad to me because others have told me. But if I smoke pot, I may enjoy it. So empirically smoking may be good, but others have told me no. It has serious consequences in later life. But I am not experiencing later life. I am experiencing the now life, which tells me it is good. So empirical, knowledge need not to be a true knowledge. Again, we all go by that. How many medicines we are swallowing? Which next time you go to buy, the pharmacist says that it's taken out of shelf. Why? Didn't you read yesterday in paper that it causes cancer? So you mean they were feeding us cancer pills? No, they thought it was curing cancer pill. So today, all of a sudden, yeah. So who decided it? Who told you that? We stopped buying it. All these magazines come, health magazines come, they say that eat that, don't eat this one, wash this in soap water, wash that in salt water, wash this in hot water, all these things you are doing. I have never, washed and scientifically tested what is gone or not. Whatever comes and they say that, I said, Grace, you hear that one, you wash it down in salt water. Tomorrow say, don't wash it in salt water. And this is happening every day. There is no human being who has consistently developed a system of rationality or logic or a system of experience. We all operate and live on faith. Faith in yourself, faith in your neighbors, faith in your doctor, faith in your professor, But I say that the greatest person you can put faith is in God. If you are a believer in God. Yes. I am experiencing the new life, which tells me it is good. So empirical knowledge need not to be always true. Scientific knowledge is not possible without some amount of subjective prejudices. Science governs repeatable phenomena only. Evolution, for example, is not a repeatable phenomenon. What happened is happened. It is not happening again and again. Science is experiment, observation, inference. I cannot have an inference in science without an experiment and an observation. When I believe something as science without experiment and observation, I am purely subjective. Let me say that my faith in science is to a great extent faith in some scientists. And I know that all those scientists are human beings like me, they are subjected to errors. Some of the scientists, they have done, great foolishness, some of them, Who was that scientist who had two cats and, what was his name? Newton, yes. Newton hired a carpenter and said that he had two cats, one a big one and a small one. So requested the carpenter, put a small door and a big door. I said, carpenter said, why? Because I have a small cat. It can go only through the small door. He couldn't think that a small cat can go through the big door. But he is the father of modern science. Who was that man who sat on eggs to hatch? Faraday or somebody, And it was a mess, that. But he figured out that the heat of, man's pelvic cavity was so much so if he sit on it for so long, then the egg will be hatched, the chicken will come out. But everybody, hear about the physicist who went out to buy oil. As he was buying the oil and bringing it, the thought came, for every action there is equal and opposite reaction. So what will happen if he turned the bottle upside down with the caps open? Because the equal, whatever pressure it is putting downward and equal and opposite, so it should stand there. So what? It all went out. So he found that always it's not equivalent or opposite. Sometimes it's different. Scientists make mistakes. What was one of those scientists? They have done 1,000 experiments before he was successful. I can remember his name.
Edison,
yeah. 1,000 experiments, and then his fellow scientists said that let us quit it. He said no, now we know 1,000 ways
of not
doing it. And then the next one was successful. So everybody is, there is subjective elements and all that. There is nothing called pure objective knowledge. And if people say that it is there, I say it's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. So faith, as much as, has an objective part and a subjective part. So to the question, how do we know what we know is true? The answer given by every system is faith. Those in the scientific system believe what they believe is true. Those in the experiential system, empirical system, believe what they experience is true. Those in the logical system believe what they know is true. Those in the faith system believe what they believe is true. So which is the truth? That's the question then. Now the big question is, if every system rests ultimately on faith, then which one is more acceptable? 95% or more of the average population of the world believe there is God. They all know that their faith is in God and it is true. But science will come forward and say 95% of the world population believe ignorantly in God. They say that they have no scientific evidence to prove God. Now who is right? The 95% who believe that they say that they believe in God, or the 5% who say that they believe there is no God? That's the question. If the scientists believe many things by faith, then they should better not question. Is it possible for the Christian to know the truth without clashing with the science? In another sense, how can the knowledge we gain through faith in biblical revelation compare to knowledge gained by scientific investigation of the universe? This is a question. How can the knowledge we gain through faith in biblical revelation compare to knowledge gained by a scientific investigation of the universe? The answer is not as difficult as many may think. As we pointed out earlier, when all is said and done, all knowing requires faith. Faith precedes reason. Faith precedes reason. Neidhart has said rightly, faith correctly viewed is that illumination by which true rationality begins. Faith correctly viewed is that illumination by which true rationality begins. In other sense, until your mind is illuminated, rationality doesn't begin. Reason is in the mind of man, right? Rationality or reason does not have an independent existence somewhere in the sky. It's always in the mind of a man. You begin to think right only when your mind is illuminated. So the question is, what illuminates your mind? Is your mind illuminated by yourself or somebody else illuminated your mind? Einstein was a poor student in physics to start with. His teacher said that you will never pass 10th grade. He was so stupid in physics. But Einstein's mind was illuminated and he became the greatest mind in physics. Even now his brain is being studied by the University of Pennsylvania to find out why Einstein was so smart. They have a piece of his brain they are examining. He had more wrinkles on it than any other person's. So the ability to think and store information was there more. A mind may be like egg, that shell, no wrinkles there. Some of you may have all wrinkles like a 98-year-old man's skin. But the interesting thing is, whoever it is, Einstein, a poor student in physics, became a smart student in physics because his mind was illuminated. Even Buddhism, Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree and said that he was enlightened, so he is called Buddha. Well, his mind was enlightened, that enlightenment did not come from the right source, so, it only found more darkness in it. That's all. After all, that's the way sometimes, the more you study, I had a professor who said that when he passed the 10th grade, he thought he knows everything. Then he said he went to, his degree and he said, now I know everything. That was his feeling. He did his master's, then he began to understand that I know many things. Then he said, he did MPhil and then he began to realize that I know very little. Then he said he did his PhD. And PhD was on a very minor part of the big subject. And then he found out that in 4 years or 5 years he got PhD, he found out that I know nothing. Absolutely nothing. If I spend the rest of my life, studying that subject, it's so vast. So the more you study, you realize that you are... That may be the reason why Solomon said that, there is weariness in studies. So we don't know. Yes. Some scientists argue that science is a primary source for knowledge, while faith in biblical revelation is some blind, second-class superstition. Or they say the biblical epistemology is superstitious. But the fact remains that all methods of knowing ultimately rely on some assumptions. All knowledge. Edward T. Ramsell has rightly said, the natural man is no less certainly a man of faith than the spiritual man. But his faith is in the ultimacy of something than the word of God. The spiritual man is no less certainly a man of reason than the natural man. But his reason, like that of every man, functions within the perspective of his faith. That's all. The natural man is a man of, presumptions. The other man also. The natural man is of reason. The spiritual man is also reason. The basic problem of philosophy is not the problem of faith versus reason. The crucial problem is that some thinkers place their trust in a set of certain assumptions in their search for truth, while other thinkers place their trust in a quite different set of assumptions. That's all. That's a famous quotation by a man called Warren C.M. Secular humanists place their trust in a certain finding of science and experience, neither of which can be rationally demonstrated to be the source of all truth. No. Christians also put some faith in science, history and personal experience, but they know such avenues for discovery of truth are not infallible. Christians know that men of science make mistakes, and scientific journals can practice discrimination against views considered dangerous. People were excavating in Texas areas because those areas had a lot of these dinosaurs, and there were some Christians also in that team. As they were excavating, they found the footprint of a man and the footprint of a dinosaur in the same place, overstamped. The dinosaur's footprint in which the footprint of the man. That means the dinosaur and man were walking together. Probably the man was walking a dinosaur. But you know what happened? Ben has a picture of it. Because some Christians immediately took the picture, but other scientists came and destroyed it. That's it. We cannot accept it. That's against our theory. If you accept it, then all the theory of evolution has to go. So everybody works on assumptions. You got a bone somewhere this big. That's all you found. You go to an artist and say that, you assume that this is, this bone. And with these dimensions, you make the man. So they made man. They don't know whether this is... that is assumed. That is presumed. So this is the sort of thing they do. All these theories, they are developed by some assumptions. Let this presume once upon a time. In the maths you say, let this be the x. Then you are finding out what x is. Well, in maths it's okay, but in science it's not. Especially on biological sciences, when it comes, it's not. So Christians know that histories can be perverted, distorted or twisted, and that some personal experience are not good source or fact for knowledge. Christians believe that biblical revelation is true and that God would not fool or mislead His children. And I think that's the most consistent faith, because our definition of God is that He is truthful. Truthful God cannot fool people. God is absolute. Absolute God cannot rely on relatives, so but His decrees are absolute. The Creator God knows better than all creatures about what is created. So we are more consistent than all the science. The science cannot make a categorical statement like that. They also use the word believe, but their belief is somewhat, we believe. We believe. But the Christians say, we believe. They cannot say we believe. Because tomorrow there will be coming up more evidence to say that, well, what I said, I have a correction. New findings have come that, and they have to. Bible now, 2000 years, people were preaching the same thing, we are preaching the same thing. We never say that, no, it's absolutely true. It will be true forever and ever. Forever and ever. So Christian philosophy is held by many as the most rational worldview. Christian philosophy or Christian worldview does not require no more faith than any other philosophy. Let me ask this one. What needs more faith? To believe that a sovereign, absolute, eternal person, God, made man in His image, or out of non-living, by chance, a single cell came, and then years and thousands and millions of years passed, and then something moved, then there was a big bang and something came, then after something, then again a big bang, and then finally man evolved. And it's so interesting that man and a woman evolved on the same spot. The man evolved here and the woman evolved in Antarctica or in Australia, then no, it cannot go. And it stopped immediately. So who brought them both together? So the mankind could be, well, you need a whole lot more faith to believe that than to believe that God made. If somebody asked, who made this watch? I believe my watchmaker. Oh, no, it was just by chance, by chance. There was an earthquake and there were, some metals and all that. The earthquake was very, and the wind began to blow and it went round and round and round and round, and then finally the watch was there. Well, if you can believe that, that's evolution. If you believe the watch was made by the watchmaker, that's creation. I say I believe in creation. They say, well, that's a very simple way of putting things. I say, I want to put things very simple and not complicated. What's the use of putting things complicated? No. So truly speaking, spontaneous generation, that doctrine of secular humanism and Marxism or the randomness of all nature, it's foolishness. It's very difficult. But to accept the Christian doctrine of the Creator and the creation makes a lot of sense. Science and Christian philosophy. Should we try to reconcile science with Christian philosophy? That's an important question that is debated. Do we have to reconcile science with Christian philosophy? Is it necessary? The answer is true science and Christian philosophy are never in conflict and need no reconciliation. No reconciliation. True science and Christian philosophy are not, diametrically opposed. No. They are in full harmony. True Christian philosopher recognizes the true scientific method as a limited but valuable front. True science lends support to the teleological argument that design evidences intelligent creation, and Bible gives support to the cosmological argument that the origin and the nature of the universe. The science is not a threat to biblical philosophy at all. Stephen D. Schwartz cites 4 specific scientific discoveries that support biblical view of creation. Number 1, he said the second law of thermodynamics makes creation a very valid, intelligent thing. Secondly, the impossibility of spontaneous generation of life from non-life. Thirdly, the genetic information theory, DNA, makes creation has to be absolutely. The anthropic principle that the cosmos is fine-tuned to accommodate human life. These 4 things. What does the second law of thermodynamics say? What does it say? You're all students of engineering, so you must be able to explain it better than me. What does it say?
Nothing deteriorate.
Yes, in all energy exchanges, if no energy enters or leaves the system, the potential energy of this state be less than the initial energy. In any process, unless some energy enters in, there will be less energy. That's it. The entropy goes on. Yes. So how can then evolution be? Evolution says that from smaller, the bigger. So for the smaller to get the bigger, energy has to enter from somewhere. From somewhere. So it has to be provided, supplied by somebody. Who? Who will supply? Matter can neither be created nor destroyed, only it can be changed, the form. So it cannot be. So they have a problem. The impossibility of spontaneous generation of life from non-life. You keep non-life in a sterilized form in a vacuum.